Hello IndyCar fans! Welcome to Formula Pun Racer. Sorry to keep you waiting, even though I did promise in my last video that I'd be back for part 2 for a rundown of IndyCar drivers and who they'll be driving for which team in the 2023 season, like I did F1. But I will say that, aside from being kept busy, that there is another issue, actually 2 news articles for this off-season of racing that I like to cover, and the IndyCar lineup for 2023 will be in the next video, because it makes it easier for me to edit and all that, and save you time and probably keep you interested. And this is some wonderful news that occurred just 2 weeks ago. I meant to talk about it earlier, but I didn't have a chance, and here we go. The Andretti Autosport team, run by good old Michael Andretti himself, is not only merging with Wayne Taylor Racing in sports car racing, which also drives Cadillacs, but Michael Andretti's Andretti Global team, as he calls it, as he continues to build new headquarters in Fisher, Indiana, just north of Indianapolis, to expand his operations in racing, has decided to go into Formula One racing as an 11th team. What? But the weirdest part about this is, not only is Michael Andretti trying to expand into Formula One, he wants to do it with Cadillac power, or at least have Cadillac as a sponsorship. Yeah, I know it seems kind of weird, like, Cadillac? Why couldn't it be with Buick, I think to myself. No doubt if GM hadn't killed off Saturn, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, or Saab, I'll bet he probably would have used maybe their Oldsmobile or even Pontiac for the glory of Knight Rider. That's what I would have preferred. Hell, I'd like to see Buick return to IndyCar racing, but that doesn't seem to be likely. And how ironic, considering that Oldsmobile won 5 Indy 500s in a row, and yet they're the ones that have gone under. What a shame, though. I will never forgive GM for killing off Pontiac, Saturn, Saab, and Oldsmobile. With that said, considering I'm no fan of Cadillacs either, GM stands for greedy.
This joke was too dirty to include.
Okay, maybe that joke was too dirty. Kudos to British YouTube user Jamie the Comic for pointing that out to me. Thank you, man. But seriously, to get back to Michael Andretti's determination to have an F1 entry in F1 in 2026 with Cadillac behind him, this would in fact be General Motors' very first involvement in F1 ever. The other 2 conglomerates of America, Chrysler and Ford, have also had their share in F1, with Ford having more prominent success, as well as with some ties with Cosworth in the past. And Chrysler did so for a few years in the early 90s with Lamborghini engines, but they weren't as successful. But to see General Motors dip their toes in the F1 pool would be quite interesting. Although, ironically enough, I heard that they wouldn't actually have a power plant or power unit in F1 for a while, because if Andretti with Cadillac were to go into F1, you'd be surprised at what power unit is actually lined up to provide power engines for the team. You'd think with Michael Andretti being Italian-American, and with his father, the world-famous Mario Andretti, having some success in F1 driving for Lotus Ford in 1978, as well as driving some Ferraris to success in F1 and sports car racing, you'd think it'd be Ferrari, but oh no. Despite the Cadillac badging on the cars, it is most likely that he will be backed up by Renault.
Say what?
Sacre bleu. I know, you would have thought Ferrari would have made sense for Andretti. But interestingly enough, it's going to be the French engine Renault to provide power units to Andretti Global should this deal be finalized in Formula One in 2026. And it's a shame because I would have preferred Ferrari myself, being a Ferrari fan, knowing that they are providing power units to only one team in the 2023 season this year, and that of course is simply Alpine Renault, which will be right behind Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. Doesn't get more French patriotic than that. It's a shame that it won't be Ferrari because, as I said, Italian-Americans would appreciate this, and it makes poetic sense with Ferrari having been won through Mario Andretti in the past in sports cars and F1 races in the early 70s. But if that's what is anxious to step up to the plate and provide power to Andretti Global's sport, so be it. But there were also talks even that, despite being badged by Cadillac, that even though there might not be a Cadillac power unit underneath it all, it might even be Honda for all I know.
Whoa.
I know it does sound weird. I mean, like, why would a Honda power a Cadillac badged car like that? Well, because despite the fact that GM and Honda are two different conglomerates, Honda and General Motors, thanks to their association in providing engines in Indy cars, have a technical alliance with each other. So that would explain the possibility that, while for the most part it's Renault that most likely will be providing power units to the Andretti Global team, that Honda is in talks with the idea too. But there have also been talks that Ford and Hyundai are interested in joining Formula One in the future. So Ford to return to F1? That should be interesting. And Hyundai from South Korea? That should be cool. But I guess that would explain why we're not getting Ford in IndyCar anytime soon. Let alone Buick. Well, seems that Formula One has the bigger carrot to dangle in front of interested manufacturers' heads, so what can we say? There's no stopping F1 in the way they do things. Ironically enough, despite the fact that more teams in the F1 paddock will mean more business and more fans and all that, especially for an all-American team like Andretti Global, along with Haas, there has been some teams that are in complete disagreement with the idea, and I don't understand exactly why, but it's just ridiculous to think that people like Toto Wolff of Mercedes and Christian Horner Red Bull and even the Ferrari team and Aston Martin team are actually against Andretti Global entering F1. It's like they think that they're taking away their prize money or whatnot. Like, I don't see how that's true. And even the FIA president, Mohammed bin Sulayem, is actually siding with Andretti Global, thinking this is a great idea. But it's amazing, like, that the Red Bull, Ferrari, and Aston Martin and Mercedes drivers and teams call themselves men among men for being the best in the business, yet they have a big problem with an American team or expansion of teams in F1. It tells me one thing about these men.
Men are such babies.
Considering how much money Michael Andretti has in his bank account, along with expanding his racing operations into Fisher, Indiana, I would say that Michael certainly has the goal and the resources and the finances and you name it to build a team suitable enough to race in Formula One. Michael Andretti, even though I'm not a Cadillac fan, I am certainly on your side, and I hope something wonderful occurs and you will race your team in Formula One in 2026 and beyond with great success. And who knows what drivers you'll choose by then. Only time will tell, but first, let's indulge in the pleasures of what's coming in 2023. And on top of all this hype about Andretti trying to dip into Formula One, well, 2 weeks ago was the Formula E season opener in Mexico City, and it was won by Michael Andretti's Formula E team, Andretti E-Autosport, you could say. Its driver, Jake Dennis of England, took victory in an electric Porsche unit, so congratulations, Jake Dennis, on your historic win in Mexico. I'm sure it was something very exciting for you to talk about. I will say one thing before I continue with my second and final article of this video about Andretti expanding into F1. With so many different categories that the team is involved in, if you ask me, do you think, and please comment if you agree with me or not, that Michael Andretti should take over the IndyCar series and the IMS from Roger Penske someday? Because in my opinion, if he were to, I think he would definitely do a hell of a good job, probably better than Roger would, because, you gotta reach out to all fans, young and old, and so far it doesn't look like... Some people have been saying that Roger hasn't been doing quite a great job as we think he should. But what do I know? But this is just my personal opinion. So, Michael, if you're watching this, do you think maybe you could be a better owner of the IMS and the IndyCar series? You probably could get more engine manufacturers involved and sponsors and whatnot. So, please let me know what you think if you're watching this. And I wish you the best of luck in Formula One. But now on to my second and final article. It involves the Indy 500, and I shall drink this glass of delicious milk, the IndyCar Victor's drink. As I say to the voice of the Indy 500, Paul, it's time to add a few additional pages into this chapter before the season's even started, let alone the Indy 500. And what would that be, you ask? Well, 2021 NASCAR champion Kyle Larson is planning to qualify for the Indy 500 in 2024. with Hendrick Motorsports collaborating with Arrow McLaren. So this should be an amazing event coming up. And why not this year? Well, obviously, he wants time to get used to how IndyCar handles, because racing in the Indy 500 has been a lifelong dream for Kyle Larson in contrast to his NASCAR drive. But he's also planning to do the Daily Double, which is an IndyCar driver who also races in a NASCAR race the same day in two different locations. It all began in 1994 with John Andretti, who would race in the Indy 500 and then would fly down all the way to Charlotte, North Carolina for the Charlotte Motor Speedway's annual Coca-Cola 600, which is held on the same day as the Indy 500, a few hours apart from each other. So it's quite a hectic thing to do for a driver. And a few drivers have done it before, but so far, only one driver has managed to complete all 1,100 miles at once. In other words, the Indianapolis 500 plus the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte equals 1,100 miles. Tony Stewart is the only driver to have completed all 1,100 miles in 1 year, which was in 2001. One of the latest additions to try this, but didn't complete it all, was Kurt Busch. He finished 6th with Andretti Autosport in the Indy 500, although since I don't follow NASCAR, I don't know where he finished in the Coca-Cola 600. But pretty amazing for someone who is a full-time NASCAR driver attempting his hand in the Indy 500 as well. So Kyle, if you're watching this, not only do I congratulate you on winning the championship back in 2021, that was quite a showdown, but seeing you race the Indy 500, I'll be there for that. And will you too, Paul Page? I know I will. Will you be there, David Land, this year and next? I know you will, as well as I. So if you, Paul, and I get together, we should get a threesome photo of us sometime before the race if it's possible. What do you say, eh? Well, anyway, that's it for this video. My next video will speak of the IndyCar season lineup of which driver will be driving for which team. In conclusion, if there's any action going on this weekend, well, the 27th and 28th of January is the doubleheader for Formula E in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Can Jake Dennis and Andretti Autosport keep up that dominant performance they had in Mexico City, or will someone else come out on top? But most importantly, a bigger article to talk of that comes with this weekend. This Saturday, on the 28th, is the Rolex 24 at Daytona, where a lot of sports cars, starting with Andretti Autosport tie-ins with Wayne Taylor Racing in a Cadillac, among other sports car prototypes called GTP, will race for 24 hours around the world-famous Daytona International Raceway. And it all begins on NBC. I will give you a schedule of when you can watch all 24 hours of this race, and tell me, do you like Porsche, Acura, Cadillac, or someone else to win the Rolex 24 at Daytona? Oh, let's go away, I say, to Daytona, USA, as well as prepare for my next video, which will tell you which driver will be driving for which team in Indy cars. See you in the next video, everyone. I'm Aaron Cylinder, firing on all cylinders.